Back once again with Joan Konner, Dean Emeritus at Columbia University School of Journalism, former NBC News producer, and Bill Moyers producer as well. Emerita, I should say. I got to get my...
Emerita.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. The content of the newscast itself. I remember when we suddenly had 24/7 cable operations beginning, and we thought, unbelievable the potential there. We can cover all of the world's challenges and tragedies and all the opportunities that are there. And instead we ended up with slow-speed car chases featuring O.J. Simpson and now Paris Hilton.
Paris Hilton.
What's going on? What does that say to you?
Wall Street. I'm sorry to say that on Bloomberg with all the numbers crawling around the screen. What's it say down there that Paris Hilton's ratings are up like that?
How does that speak of Wall Street?
Well, I think there's been a fallacy for a long time in television, and that is that the programmers, the bosses, the corporation wants to give the people what they want. But people don't know what they don't know, and they may just love something they haven't seen. So always responding to the sensational, the commercial, the celebrity is, I think, forcing good, important, interesting, stimulating news off the air. And I just think that's a fallacy in reasoning. I remember when we produced Joseph Campbell on The Power of Myth on public television, and I had to stand up before the convention of public television programmers and say, who is Joseph Campbell and why are we paying for him? And it was a hard thing to do. Nobody had heard of him. Now it's the biggest fundraiser. They've been fundraising since we did it in 1986. And people are hungry to learn about themselves, to learn about their relationship to each other, to learn about their relationship to the divine, to learn about their psyches, to learn about the meaning of life. Well, people aren't going to answer that on a questionnaire because they don't know that in fact this is a hunger in them. But as journalists, I think that we have an obligation. It's one of the reasons for doing this book, which I call a soundbite history, is to show that these are the deeper questions all of us are concerned with. And we're living in a world which they call polarized, but and it is polarized, but the I'm right and you're wrong way of looking at things is not the human way. The human way is to question, why are we here? What are we doing? What's important? What should I concentrate on? What should I look at? And what do I need to know to make this democracy work better?
But now it seems that technology in a way has conspired to make it far too easy for people who program to see what effectively will create a tick up in ratings. And we all know that you put a chase on cable television and people are drawn to the screen like a bug to a light.
Well, I'd like to ask this question. I think that's true. When it's going on, people want to know what the ending is. But then they beat it and beat it and beat it, and I really wonder if the ratings don't go down after that. Now, a trial is a different matter. O.J. and the trial was an ongoing drama. But I don't know that they watch the car chase afterwards when it concerns somebody they don't care anything about.
Or do they drive ultimately, and this is one of the things that I wonder about as well, do they ultimately drive people away? People say, I don't need that in my life anymore.
Well, the ratings overall are down.
And then people, in the process, everybody suffers. Because it's a trickle up or trickle down, whatever you want to call it. But suddenly people say, I don't need that in my life anymore. I don't need the stress and the strains, the artificially contrived sort of angst that's created, because you get the sense that the manipulation is all too successful, and that people ultimately decide, if that's what the news is all about, who needs the news?
I think the numbers bear you out. Now they're talking about 3 million, 4 million. When I was working, and you were working in commercial television, 17 was what they were talking about, or that's 17 million people. When I did a show on marijuana, I remember the note on my desk from Bob Mulholland the next day saying, that's great, 17. Then I did a show on radioactive waste. 6 million, a rating of 6, that was a failure. Now they're glad to get 4.
Well, and that became the death knell for documentaries on television as well. You couldn't generate the kind of numbers that we could But then again, it goes back to Fred Friendly and the Vietnam hearings, doesn't it? This has been going on forever.
It has.
So where does it go? When you saw the bright young faces for the grad students going into the Columbia University J School, what did you tell them about the future that they were getting themselves into?
I felt as though the future depended on them, and if they got out there and they fought for doing meaningful work, they would find it someplace. And I still believe that there are journalists out there, call them shoe leather journalists or pounding the pavement journalists, that are doing an excellent job. It just gets harder and harder to earn a living that way. I mean, and that's the reality of it. It's really the economics of the business. People can talk about online, hard to make a living that way unless you're an owner. But there are good journalists, and I rather talk about journalists today than journalism, because journalism is just seeping through the cracks of the financial realities that determine the society. But there are good journalists writing for good publications, and you have to look for it. And you have to look for it in the glut. And there is a glut.
We've all become editors in a way. We have to edit ourselves.
Right.
As you put together the Atheist Bible, did anything in there particularly speak to you and gave you hope?
Well, I had fun with it. I have to say that it is satirical. And it also, I think, is somewhat kindly. I was not happy with what I saw as these polemics coming out, trashing religion. I, first of all, understand why people believe, and that they do believe, and that religion does a lot of good in the world. I think we're living in a time when it's very destructive. I kind of marked the beginning of this religious zealotry that we're seeing, and this religious sectarianism to Bush's answer in one of the debates when they said, "Who's your favorite philosopher?" and he said, "Christ." And I think that launched it, and then 9/11 clinched it. But religion is important, and we should think about it, and we do.
And we will. The Atheist Bible, an illustrious collection of irreverent thoughts compiled by Joan Konner. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, our pleasure, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.